Good morning, everyone. This is Heather Thornton. I'm a billing specialist with Therap Services. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be kind of going over what the CPS transition is going to look like within Therap itself with the information that we have at this time. So that is really the main point to today's call. And also on the line as well is, Michelle. She is your Therap rep for that area. And also on the line is Tony Ann. She is another billing specialist that is helping to cover PA. So again, today, if you have any questions or anything like that, please use the box over here, the chat box over here to the right, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Take me just a moment. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. All right. So as much and as fond as we were of the old CPS configuration where we're talking your percentages and all of that fun stuff where we're tracking all of that, that is not something that is going to be effective anymore in effective July 1st of this year. Previously, we had a CPS configuration where you were tracking that information, and staff were going into the attendance. They were selecting facility or community as the actual service description code, and this is just to kind of give you that understanding, just as an FYI here. So they weren't seeing all of that other breakdown. They were selecting community and putting in their time in, time out for what they're providing community or facility if you were using our previous CPS configuration. Now, that being said as well, if you never went and started utilizing our CPS configuration, then your staff were still going in and selecting the W codes. And yes, these are actually the new W codes that were sent out in that the previous bulletin. But just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea here, you do not have to, for those that have been utilizing Therap and do have service authorizations in place, you do not have to go in there and discontinue them. Your service authorizations are already set to expire on June 30th. Okay? So for the previous service authorizations, you do not have to go in there and do anything with them. They will expire on their own. Okay, so when you have an end date here, that is going to allow you to do anything you need to do within that time frame, meaning generate billing, edit billing data, any of that type of functionality within those dates. So I just kind of want to reaffirm that information just to reduce the amount of work, because I don't want anybody having to go in there and thinking they need to go in and discontinue authorizations that actually will expire on their own effective June 30th. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start over here on the admin side and show you what those new codes look like in the system. Okay. I'm going down to my billing section and my description code and list. Okay, now at this time, these other codes aren't going to go anywhere, okay? Since they've already been applied, your percentage W codes, all of those have already been applied, so we're really not going to do anything with those. So these aren't going to leave your system if you already have them set up that way. But what the new ones look like, go ahead and come down here. All right, so this is going to be actually a lot more straightforward in Therap's system as far as how you are setting them up and applying them to people. And you have a lot more flexibility within the system as well. But what this looks like, you see there your CPS community, your one-on-one, There's your W code. There's your unit rate. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Your unit of measure. So this actual setup is really straightforward. You will not be selecting anything here. This is specifically for that previous configuration that is not applicable any longer. Okay, so please, when you're setting up these new W codes in your system, please do not select anything here. Okay. So you're going to go through and you're going to go ahead and set up those W codes. All right, label them accordingly. They're all going to have that same layout and that same setup. And by the way, this is also being recorded, and this will be posted to the Pennsylvania state page and on the Therap site for future reference as well. Okay. Now, if I come over here, what that looks like on your service authorization. Okay. Okay, and I have a few set up just for an example purpose, okay? But right here, let me go in. So here, for instance, here's a one-to-one. You're going to have your total authorized units. You have your primary diagnosis code, of course. With this new configuration, you now really do have that flexibility of billing directly off of the documentation, since it's not a configuration where you have to utilize the attendance in order to get the correct calculations. And the biggest rule of thumb, if you're going to be billing directly from documentation, is that it is one ISP program per procedure code. And when I say one procedure code, this is the one I mean right here. Okay, so you would need to have a separate ISP program for each one of those for that individual if you are wanting to bill directly off of the documentation. Okay. Now, if you want to utilize the attendance still, which you certainly can, you will just have it linked up to the attendance, kind of very similarly to how it's been working previously. Again, same type of information, but down here, there you go. It's just linked to the attendance, and time in, time out is required. And again, we're going to kind of go through what each one of those looks like. All right. So if you are going to be pulling directly from the documentation, I'm going to come right over here. I'm going to go ahead and come here from, this is going to be that front end perspective. This is what your staff would be going in, for example, and documenting on. And again, this one would be specific to maybe that one-on-one. So this is going to be specific to that code that I have assigned. If they're going to have multiple codes assigned to them, I would need to have an ISP program for each one of those. Okay. All right, so for instance, here is my service date. And this is not anything you'll have to use specifically in regards to answering the questions, those things. This is just an example. Okay, so your begin time and end time. Okay. And the reason I'm walking through this one, because if you were previously using our configuration, you would not have been utilizing ISP billing for those purposes. Okay, location. All right. I can answer the questions accordingly. Pretty straightforward in that respect. I'm just going to go ahead and do the one there for today's purposes. I can make my comments applicably, but if you notice, this ISP program is defaulted to yes. All right. So right over here, so that's their entry. Okay. If I'm going to generate my billing from the documentation, I would come over here, and that's their part of it. They don't need to go anywhere else. I'd come right over here, go to my ISP billing, select my service dates, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the first through today, and go ahead and select my applicable service description code. Okay. They have documentation in place. Their name will show up here. I just have the one right now, y'all, so everybody would show up here. It's not going to be a one-by-one. You would do your select all. You can do a little spot check view before you generate the billing. Here, you can actually go into the node if you choose to do so. I'm going to leave these settings down here below. That just indicates I'm going to generate one service line for each date of service, as you can now. User duration from time in, time out is going to calculate based on the time in, time out. And it's going to grab all the minutes for the day and apply that applicable rounding. I'm going to go ahead and hit generate billing data. Okay. So you see my service date, my billable units, the unit rate, and the amount for that date of service. So notice right here. And this is also going to give me that ISP data reference as well of exactly where that documentation comes from. And I would apply this information on my claim, and that is actually what would be submitted. And we'll walk through that process here in a minute. But in the attendance, if you still want to actually utilize the attendance, it is going to essentially be the same functionality. I'm going to go ahead and go to my attendance, select my applicable attendance type, and grab my service code and my program. All right. So on here, one thing I do want to mention is this change service option over here to the left. I can do a show all, and it will break down the facility and the community for that individual. Again, keep in mind too, this is for demo purposes, but I did want to show you that they're going to be able to see both the community and the facility on the same page. And you would do your present, you would do your time in, time out. And I'm actually going to flip it back so I can see one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and do my present and do my time in, time out. We'll say 10 for my facility or my community, which one I want to back into. So I can always see which one I did there. And go ahead and select my individual and do my submit new. So the entry is still going to be, they're going to select the applicable option. They're going to do their time in, time out. They're going to select the individual. Now, if I want to have that show all option, or if I want to enter in my time in, time out in the community, I can flip that over. They don't have to go back out to the previous page. And I would essentially do the same thing. So there we go there. And your time in, time out. So we're going to say from that 10 a.m. And you can do the check in, check out. You can use the drop down like it's showing there. It's completely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and select that and submit new. If I need to add in more facility time, I can go back and do that additionally on that previous option. Do my show all, or I can just flip back and forth. Again, you have this flexibility depending on really how you set that up. And I'm going to come in here, and I can add in that additional time in, time out. There is an overlapping report that if you are not aware of it, that I would recommend you getting familiar with. It is located in your report library. over on your agency reports tab, and it's called overlapping report. And it is there for ISP programs and for attendance. So you can use it either way. And it will catch any kind of overlapping time and allow you to correct it prior to generating billing. So right here. Okay. All right, so their entries, like I said, is not going to change. You're still going to go through your approve process, review the information, of course, approve. I'm still going to go ahead and generate your billing data. So there is my generated billing. Okay. My total billable units, and there's my attendance data reference. Now I also can link up the option of doing supporting documentation in there, so I can tell in that attendance there I want there to be at least one piece or two pieces of supporting documentation before it allows me to generate billing data. And when I say supporting documentation, I mean that ISP data. The ISP programs looks across actual ISP programs, that overlapping report. It looks across ISP programs, because on the actual ISP program itself, you have the option to allow for time overlap or not for that specific ISP program. So that's your indicator for on that specific one. Sorry, that was a side question, was asking how that actual overlapping report worked. I would show you an example of it, but I don't have any overlapping information in place. Alrighty then, but it is located right here under your report library, and it's in there already, everyone. So you can definitely go in there. So you can look across program or the overlap report. So this is going to be any programs you have set up, or your actual ones for the ISP programs where you have the validation for the overlap not allowed. So, all right. So your generating billing process is really kind of going to be the piece that has the possibility of changing, because you can pull that from documentation, or you can still utilize the attendance piece of it. But your actual claim process itself will be the same. Before I show you that, right here, if you look at how that is broken out on the utilization reporting, it will break it down by each one of those W codes. So if I come in here and I select my CPS, and I'm going to save for the month, I can also do date range if I want to. And I'm going to go ahead and do for the month. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and export that down to Excel. On this report, I would always recommend using that formatted, because it's going to give you your totals. Okay, so it is going to break down that information. It's going to show me the units that are that have been generated for billing purposes. It's going to show me my total used units, total amount. If I'm using that monthly authorized units per period on the service authorization, it will break down that information for me as well. It will give me my totals down here, and it'll still lay out my actual description information. So this is what I would recommend as your heavy review tool as well. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go in and generate that onto my claims. If you already have claim templates set up, you do not need to go in there and uncheck all those other ones, okay, on your templates themselves, for instance. Okay, So I don't actually have to uncheck all of these. I just have to make sure that my new ones, my new W codes are checked. So right in here, I don't actually have to manually go and check because this information is tied to your service authorization. So if you didn't generate billing data, it's not going to generate a claim. And you can't generate billing data unless you have an authorization in place. And since those are all expiring June 30th, you're not going to be generating billing data off of them. There you go. For your existing templates, you just need to come in here and check the applicable code or codes that you're adding to that individual. But from that point, you're just going to go ahead and do your new using template. Select your applicable code or codes. You can select more than one code at a time as long as it has the same encode in common. I'm going to come down here and do my service base. Okay, and next. It's going to bring up anybody that has a claim template in place for that service. And if I've generated billing data, it'll generate a claim. If I didn't generate billing data, it won't generate a claim. Okay. So it applied that information onto that claim template data. There's my service line information. There's my billable units. And I would just go back and do that for each correlating code or codes. All right. Before I actually submit the claim, I'm always going to pull my own claim report. I'm going to make sure that anything I generated for billing got assigned onto a claim. Ah, for shame. Okay, I left one on purpose. Or two on purpose, for shame on me. All right, so this is generated billing data. So there is only a finite number of reasons for this information to come up here. Either, hey, I didn't check the box on the claim template for their service code, or I skipped it when I was going through my new using template process. You're just going to go back, grab the service code or link the code and generate the claim. You always want to do this piece before you hit send on the claims because we want to make sure everything you generated for billing, you got assigned on to a claim. So when you go up and hit send, you know everything that you generated is going out the door. You can go to your professional claim and send and do your claim submit. Come down here and hit your search. All right. You do your select all and hit send claim. Like I said, if you've been using the system previously, that actual process of generating claims, doing your claim submission, even checking your utilization reporting, all of those steps will be the same for you. Like I said, the biggest transition is really going to be in the attendance. Your staff will need to know, if you're going to utilize the attendance, will need to know that actual, either the W code or what group they're in. So they will need to know that information. And what I almost recommend if you're going to go that route is almost do a little mapping for your staff saying that, okay, well, this person has this, this, and this. And that way your staff aren't jumping around or having to select miscellaneous things. They know exactly where to go. One other little tidbit too, just to kind of help staff out, and this is just a little sidebar thing, is over here on the individual homepage, if I don't want to go into, or if I don't want to leave the staff to actually click on the billing, if you're going to be having them utilize the attendance, they can actually access that attendance from the individual homepage. This isn't going to take me directly to Melissa's information, by the way. This is just going to let me get to that same attendance piece. Okay, and that's just as an FYI. All right, the other thing I did want to mention on here, and this is really going to be applicable for CPS and your other time incremented services, not for anything you're using Therap's residential configuration for, is that we do have a service authorization import that you can utilize. It does not come down from the HCSA system. It is a structured template that you have to populate the information into or export your existing service authorizations down right down here. Okay. And change your dates and upload them in to do your new service authorizations. This will create a service authorization for each line of service you have listed here. The reason it will not work for residential is because those all have to be under the same authorization. So your with day, without day, all of that have to be under the same. The other reason I do mention this is because you can utilize this to do your new ones for your new W codes for your CPS. And I'm just going to change this up a little bit here just because I've made it different. All right. So that's going to bring up any authorizations that I have expiring during that time frame, or really with that end date. You would have it on for 6/30, 2019, by the way. But you're going to be able to come in here and edit these begin dates and end dates, copy it down. This is all already tied to this individual for that program. I would be able to edit my service description codes as long as I already have them in there. Okay, be able to edit those, be able to edit my total billable units, be able to link it to the attendance and the community and the attendance type. If you're wanting to use ISP billing, your method of data collection here would be billing data input, because you will actually have to go into the system and link the ISP program at this time. You also have the capability of doing that authorized units per period as well. That allows you to utilize that as reference information in your scheduling, or allow the system to restrict a number of units per week, month, quarter, that kind of thing on there as well. If you are going to use ISP billing, I would almost recommend having the status set as pending approval, as when you're uploading these back in, which you would just do a save as and go back to right into that previous screen and hit upload. You would go into those service authorizations that are designated as pending approval and attach the ISP program and then hit approve on them. Now that's just a recommendation. If you're doing the attendance, you can go ahead and designate this as approved. And as soon as you upload these back in, they're done. Okay. And people will start being able to document on them. Like I said, the only service you really can't utilize this import for are your residential. And for your residential, you're just going to go copy those over to another individual in the system from the actual authorization itself. Okay. This is a really great feature, especially when you have services that end on that fiscal year that, for example, that's 6/30. But here you would choose the file, grab that file, and that would import it back in and apply to new service authorizations. And there's lots of checks and balances in there. It won't let you create a duplicate one. If they're not enrolled into a program, it won't let you utilize that feature. Right here, I know I'm getting a little off the CPS, but this is really what I'm trying to push for the PA providers, to make sure that for these transitions that y'all have for like July 1st, that you have all the necessary tools in place as well. But just for an example, you can use the copy feature in here. And this is located on every service authorization after it's been approved. So right down here, you have this copy for this individual. So if you're creating a new one for this person, you can hit that and put in your new dates. For another individual, if you want to apply this information to another person, you certainly can do that as well. But again, your actual method is within the system itself is actually going to be a lot more simplified in regards to setup. There's not going, this usage goes away. You're not going to be using that functionality any longer. What I would focus on is getting your codes in there. When you do receive your authorizations, go ahead and get those set up within the system for your July 1st effective date. And I know there's still a lot of questions surrounding the CPS and the rollout and everything like that. And we're asking our own questions to OPD and to PAR as well. Just trying to get a few things clarified on that. And of course, we'll be more than happy to share that as we do receive that news and information. And please, if y'all are receiving anything as well, pass that along to us. We do like this to be a collaborative effort as well. The more we share that knowledge with each other, you know, the better we are to help out. All right, that is really what I wanted to show you and go over today. Are there any questions? And again, please use that chat box over to the right to ask any questions at this time. I am going to be putting my information here, my email address in here as well. If you have any questions after this call is over, or you wake up at 3 a.m. going, oh, I wish I'd asked that question, please shoot me an email. I'm not going to respond to 3 a.m. more than likely, but I will get back to you on that. But you're more than welcome to reach out if you do have any follow-up questions. If you want to go over how you set anything up, I'm more than happy to get on a call with you or a webinar, and we can review the new setup if y'all would like. So we'll give you a few more minutes to ask any questions you may have. And again, this is being recorded, and this will be posted to the Pennsylvania State page. And just to let you know where you can locate that, that is going to be down here. You can access the website right from this spot. Okay, and you can come right here to your states, grab Pennsylvania, and it will be listed right in here. Okay. All right. Again, thank you so much for your time today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. And again, please reach out if you have any questions or you need anything. Thank you again.